And welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited about our conversation today.
Likewise, for those who haven't encountered your work, what do you do and why?
Thanks for asking. So, we help couples get really clear about what is most important to them, their values, their vision, their purpose, so that they can lead their family from that place and their definition of success and not everyone else's definition of success. Because when you don't take the time to get clear about those things that are most important to you and the vision that you want for your family, you are going to find yourself leading your family based on very much a keeping up with the Joneses, hustle hard, and you don't even know why. And so helping people get really grounded in that so that they can get off autopilot and get off that rat race and really be intentional about designing their family.
Most people by default just aspire to whatever ads are shown to them on Instagram
Yeah.
or what the neighbors are doing or what they think is the right thing to be doing. So, how would you help a couple get clear?
Well, it starts with values, which is why I feel like our work is so aligned because we know that that is foundational. If you don't do the values work first, nothing else matters, right? And so we help them get really clear first about their individual values, and then about their family values, and then helping them get clear at the individual level on what they really want out of life, their vision. We call it your decade dream. And so they each do an individual decade dream, and then together they come together with their partner, their spouse, to do a family decade dream. So those two questions, who you are and what you want as individuals, and who you are and what you want as a family. And when you have those two things paired together, you are really able to filter out all the noise, a lot of decisions. I like to talk about the decisions that are easy no's. Those are easy. Like things that you're like, oh no, I definitely wouldn't do that. But where we get tripped up is in the sure, why not? Oh, yeah, maybe. That sounds okay. And then you don't have a really good reason to say no. And it's
Mm.
not an enthusiastic, passionate yes. And so then we end up living a life where our entire life is like, sure, why not? And so how do we use your values and your decade dream, who you are and what you want, and pair those two together so that you can really filter out all of those maybes and live a life that is filled with enthusiastic, passionate yeses.
Do you think people can have quite different values, but you could still find the overlap to create their couple's value statement?
Yeah, happens all the time. Sometimes couples will do the work and they look at each other's values. Sometimes there's alignment, right? There's easy alignment. And they're just maybe using different words. Like maybe one person picked family, the other one person picked connection, so they can find those overlap. But it's not abnormal to have couples where the words feel a little off. And the beauty of that is without doing this work, those misalignments just create conflict. But when you do the work and you see it and you understand how each other is hardwiring, their values, what's important to them, why they're being triggered by certain things, it all comes back to those values. And so if they can see and understand each other's values and understand where they're aligned, where there's some opportunities to have some conversation about alignment, that is where you can really preempt and nip some of those conflict, those disagreements in the bud, because now it's not just being swept under the rug. Now we can talk about it, and that is what helps show each other more grace and compassion and empathy, because now I know that my husband's value of, let's just as an example, let's just say his value of fun or adventure is not just him going off and being selfish. It's because this is something that is really deeply important to him. It's part of his hardwiring. And so it just helps couples really show up from a place of grace and empathy and understanding instead of, oh, they're just doing it to make me mad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the dynamics I often see and have experienced is freedom or adventure versus safety and security. And I
Yeah,
suppose that's something you often encounter.
yeah.
And maybe in the beginning, for each, when a relationship is new, you don't really notice these types of things, right? You're just so involved in the experience. It's overwhelming and fun. But later on, these tendencies, these values start to creep into our behaviors and they can really cause conflict.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's so fascinating because Why is it that those two people always end up marrying each other?
Yeah, tell me about that. Yeah.
The person who always wants to be on time and leaves early, and then there's the person that's like, "Oh, it's time to leave. Let me start getting ready," and like they find a way to be in relationship.
Yeah, and maybe it's in a way it's actually complementary. You need both of those styles in order to have a
Yes.
healthy relationship. One pushes the other a little bit
Yes.
beyond their comfort zone,
Yeah.
and the other creates a little bit of structure that
Yes.
might be useful. That's what I've found in my own life. But it's really about getting clear on it. Otherwise, you don't know. You just feel like there are opposing views, opposing
Yes.
forces, opposing beliefs, and
Yes.
everything is friction.
Yes. And that's the beauty of doing this work is it kind of puts it all on the table and you start to have a deeper understanding.
Now we're shifting into an age where there are more people starting up businesses than ever before because and I think it's going to continue down that path because many people are either being disrupted, their work is changing, they decide, hey, I'm just going to work from home, start a business. How can your work help couples who are working together, entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So we have a lot of entrepreneurial couples that we work with. And I think um, this work at the heart of it is self leadership work, right? When you get clear about your values, your vision, your purpose, it's really about leading yourself well. So whether you are trying to lead a company together with your partner or your spouse, whether you're trying to just lead your family, it really starts with you at the individual level. And when you can get clear and understand what is important to you, then you show up as a much more grounded, confident leader. And when you can do that with your partner and your partner, your spouse, whoever you're leading the family with or leading the business with, man, if both people can do that and really be able to come to the table with that type of clarity, it impacts, it creates a ripple effect in the business and the teams that they're leading. Because think about, I mean, I've worked with many leaders over over the course of my career, and the leaders that lack the clarity, that don't do their work, that aren't confident, they constantly are creating chaos for their team. And so
Mm.
that image of the van that's going down the highway 60 miles an hour and the doors behind at the back of the van are open and like the team is just like hanging on for dear life, right? And that's kind of what's happening when the leader is not clear, they don't do their work, and they aren't showing up as their best selves and they're not able to lead each other, themselves, their teams with any sort of clarity or confidence. And so I think that this work is really important. And then at the family level, it's important to do this work because it bleeds into everything else that we do. We really believe that it starts at the family unit, right? If the family is healthy and strong, the people in that family unit feel unstoppable. They feel like they can go take over the world. They can go pursue their dreams and their passions and their goals. When family is a little off, when something is wrong, that is, I mean, it is hard to be fully present, plugged in, and really giving your best self at work when something is off at home. And so this work really is important because it creates a ripple effect in everything else that you want to do. And we see it time and time again. When people come to our program, they're coming to, work on their family, but the ripple effect that we see is people end up getting promotions, they end up starting businesses. I mean, like the career ripple effect that we've seen from this work, it's definitely a byproduct. It's not something that we're being intentional about trying to create, but it's just a natural byproduct of doing your own work, getting your own clarity, right? You show up better, you show up more confident, you're able to lead better, more effective in your decision making. It creates a ripple effect.
It does shake you to your core when you are having real challenges at home and then you have to shift. And people think, oh, I can just compartmentalize. It's fine. I just go from home to work. It's there. It's lingering in the background that there's conflict and unresolved issues. And I think the job of a leader is to be the calmest and most present person in the room so that you're one, helping others relax through co-regulation, but also just being aware of all of the things that are in them. Isn't that the job of a leader? Just to be
Yeah.
present?
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Listen.
And to help others and to listen. Exactly. What are some of the most common breakdowns you see in couples who are otherwise successful?
One of the most common is this misconception that they always have to be in agreement on everything. Like we really talk about alignment over agreement, and
Mm.
this idea that, my husband and I, we're doing this work, we're leading this company, we're helping other couples, but we still fight. We're not agreeing on everything, but we're aligned. We're aligned on the things that really matter, right? We're aligned on values, vision, purpose, our family goals. We are aligned on those big picture things, but we still disagree about a lot of things. And so sometimes I think couples will get into arguments, they'll disagree, and it feels like the end of the world. It feels like, oh, well, that's it for our relationship. Like we can't. No, I mean, it's healthy. We actually believe it's healthy to have these disagreements, right? Because if you're not, what's happening? It's getting swept under the rug. You're not talking about it. Then resentment builds. That's the dangerous part. That's when it becomes like really hard to recover, when you're just holding it all in. You're resentful. You feel contempt. And so just this misconception around disagreements. I think disagreements are healthy, arguments are healthy, but doing it in a respectful way.
There's nothing better than the grim silence that can linger after a
Yeah.
disagreement, and no one knows quite how to resolve it. But I guess when you're clear about your vision and your values,
Yeah.
you at least have a framework, something that you can rest back on and go, a disagreement isn't the end of the world. How can we disagree better? Do you have any tips for people who, because, it becomes a habit as well. I've got friends, for example, who I believe fighting becomes a habit,
Uh,
and it just becomes part of the operating system of the
yeah.
home. And anything flares up really fast and becomes overwhelming to both parties, and it's horrible for the kids. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say I feel like as a society we've been taught to try to like, how do you win this disagreement? How
Yeah.
do you win this battle? And the one thing that I feel like my husband and I come back to all the time is we are on the same team, right? Like if he loses and I win, we both lose. There's no winner between the two of us. We either win together or we lose together. And so remembering that we are on the same team, even when it feels like we are going head to head on things, remembering that ultimately we are on the same team, I think really helps us see the bigger picture, because it's so easy. And we're definitely not perfect on this, right? Like there are still moments where I get caught up in the argument and I'm like, he's so wrong. I'm gonna win this argument. But ultimately at the end of the day, like trying to remember we're on the same team, we're on the same team, we're on the same team. That is when I dig my heels in, and when I get prone to arguments, it's in those moments when I forget that we're not on that we're on the same team. Like I forget that for a split second, and that's when I escalate.
Mm. Do you think the fact that, I mean, we do often express the full range of emotions with those closest to us. And
Hmm.
it's an interesting thing. Most of us would never speak to a colleague or a coworker the way we speak to the person who we're supposed to love the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any tips for better communication without it feeling overly forced or structured?
Yeah. I would say the one goal that you should always have in a conversation with your spouse, your partner, your best friend is, how do I help them feel seen, heard, understood, and safe? Seen, heard, understood, and safe. Because even going back to the question about the disagreements, if you keep your end goal in mind around seen, heard, understood, and safe, you will be less likely to dig into an argument and stand your ground. Because if the goal is no longer to win the argument, but is to help them feel safe, how do you show up? Right? If that's the goal, if that's the winning criteria, especially when, a lot of our clients are high performers, they are like hardwired to win. And so I have to reframe the winning criteria for them. I say the winning criteria for this situation is not to win the argument. The winning criteria is, did your spouse feel seen, heard, understood, and safe? If the answer is no, then you didn't win. And so if we can
Mm.
keep that in mind and help that ground every single thing that comes out of our mouth, the way that we are picking up our phone in the middle of an argument and looking at our phone instead of looking them in the eye, right? Does that help them feel seen, heard, understood, and safe? If the answer is no, really thinking about like what is actually important here.
Being seen, heard, understood, and feeling safe. So if we
Hmm.
dig into each one of those, it's being present, actually looking
Hmm.
them in the eye, listening to what they're
Yeah.
saying rather than whatever script you're running in
Yeah.
anticipation, because often we're predicting what they're going to say before
Yeah.
they've even actually fully expressed themselves. Understood, so confirming, like
Yeah.
if I
Validating,
understand
conceding. Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
you're expressing this. And
Hmm.
safety is the one that I think is important because people don't realize men also need to feel safe in
Yeah.
order to not shut down. I'm
Yeah.
guilty of sometimes just shutting down, putting up the wall and going,
Yeah.
that's it. How can we make each other feel more safe?
Well, I think this piece is a byproduct of doing the first three, right? If you are actively listening, you're mirroring, you're reflecting, you're validating, you're creating empathy, you're empathizing, then the byproduct is that they are going to feel safe. If you are doing all those things without judgment, without trying to jump in and fix, then the byproduct is that they will feel safe. They will feel like they can open up and share because you've created an environment where they aren't being interrupted, where you are focused, you are paying attention, you're listening. And so I think it's a byproduct.
Yeah. And having that blueprint together also gives security because it's we're in it for the long haul. I'm not
Yeah.
just going to get rid of you because of this argument. I mean, for people who've grown up in environments where there has been a lot of conflict and where there's been divorce and breakdowns, I suppose not for everyone, but for some, it's always in the back of your mind, like this might
Yeah.
just all break down. And so you're
Yeah.
always on that edge, that
Yeah.
verge. Whereas having the shared values and the shared plan reinforces the fact that this is stable, no matter what the little bumps and the little mishaps might be.
Yeah. And the other thing that I like to say is think about expansively what you want and let that guide you. So if I am fighting with my husband, one of our most common arguments is how many pieces of luggage we're going to bring on a trip. Like, no
Yeah.
joke, every single time we go somewhere, he wants to bring like a backpack or just the carry-on. And I'm like, can we pick 4 bags? I don't know what world you're living in that you think that I can travel with 4 kids and carry on, right? And so we're always going head to head. And if in that moment I'm thinking, I want to win this argument, I want to have my way, I'm probably going to show up very differently versus if I think expansively about what I want. Well, expansively, I want to be so healthy and live so long that we are celebrating 80 years of marriage one day, that we're dancing on the dance floor at our 80th wedding anniversary. Like, who ever celebrates 80 years married, right? Like, that's what I want with our grandkids and our great grandkids all around us singing, dancing together. Like, I have this beautiful image of what that celebration could look like. Like, I'm getting teary eyed just thinking about it, right? But if I think, okay, that's what I want, that's my goal, man, that changes how I show up today because it means that I can't be so crazy that he doesn't want to travel with me anymore. If we don't travel, then, there's just like a ripple effect of my behavior. If I really think about expansively, what do I want? I want to be madly in love after 80 years of marriage. Okay, that resets how important my extra piece of luggage is, right? Like I can show up differently because I understand the big picture. Like, what's the long term goal?
But you still want that extra piece of luggage.
Yeah, yeah. I still, of course, I'm gonna sneak it in, but I'm not going to be nasty about it because I want him to still travel with me.
Well, exactly. And there's got to be a bit of compromise, especially with those types of things. There's no need for those kinds of things to become, to ruin the trip, basically.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a case of going 3 bags instead
yeah.
of 4. Are there any rhythms or practices that can, in general, or, in those acute moments of stress, reduce the friction?
All the tools that we work with our clients, that we use with our clients were developed for our own family out of survival. We were just trying to save our relationship and make sure that we didn't spiral out of control. And so we followed the cadence that most businesses follow. You set annual goals. Every quarter, you check in on those goals. Every week, you check in on that progress. And so we do the same thing with our clients at the family level. We do annual goal setting, quarterly goal setting. And then every single week, we teach them what we call your family alignment meeting, FAMS for short. But every single week, you and your spouse are the leadership team for your family. You need to have a leadership team meeting. And so we call these your FAMs. And this FAM gives you an opportunity to check in on the past 7 days. How did we do together? We have a tool called Quick Calibration where we just check in. How are we aligned? How aligned are we on the most important things in our family? And then we review our calendar for the upcoming 7 days so that we're aligned, so that we're not constantly putting out fires. And then the most important part of your FAM is really spending time talking through decisions, issues, problems, and working through those together. And what we have found is that when couples do their FAM every single week, it helps reduce the amount of conflict that happens throughout the week. Because conflict is usually a result of like miscommunication and resentment, things that happen that you didn't have a chance to talk about. And then you hold it all in because everybody's so busy. And then all of a sudden it's exploding on a random Thursday morning, right? But when you do your FAM, you have that dedicated safe space every single week to talk to your spouse. It helps create, it goes back to that thing we talked about earlier, the safety, right? It creates the safety because I know now that I've got dedicated time and space where I'm going to have my husband's undivided attention every week where we can have these conversations. So it makes it safe for me to bring up issues because I know that that's just what we do at our FAMs. We talk about these things, right? And so it has gone from Sunny, my husband Sunny, trying to get out the door in the morning with our kids, taking them to school and being like, hey, Sunny, what do you want to do about where to send the kids to school next year? I don't know, some like big life decision that I used to like try to shout out at him as he's like rushing out the door. And then I wouldn't get his attention. And he's like looking at me like I'm a crazy person. Like, why am I trying to have this conversation right now? And then I get frustrated because I feel unheard. Now I know there's this dedicated safe space every week where we're gonna have these conversations. And so that in and of itself, just having that time blocked on the calendar has created safety and helped de-escalate a lot of things.
When is the best time for a FAM? How would you recommend? Is it a Sunday morning or certainly probably not a Monday night?
Yeah. So this is what's fascinating. We have an agenda that we teach our clients. You use the same agenda every single week. The agenda is not the hard piece. The hardest piece about implementing a FAM rhythm into your marriage is figuring out the day and the time that you can commit to every single week. And literally with our clients, it takes somewhere between 3 to 6 months to figure out what that is. And so a lot of clients will start with Sunday evenings after the kids go to bed, and then they realize that's what my husband and I do. That works for us. We've been able to stick with it consistently. But for some clients, they realize they're exhausted by the end of the weekend. And so they don't want to do it on Sunday night. So then they do it on Monday night. Or we have one couple that they do no screen time with their kids, but during their FAM on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m., they give their kids an hour of screen time. And so now their kids help hold them accountable to do their FAM every week because their kids are like, hey, mom, dad, we want our iPads so that we could so don't you need to go do your FAM? We have, couples that will do their FAMs during lunch on Tuesdays. Whatever works for you that you can commit to doing and keeping it consistent. And we have couples that will do it on, a weekday morning and they go for a walk together and they do their FAMs that way. Whatever you can commit to, keeping on a consistent basis. That is the recommendation.
Is there a structure or an agenda for the FAM, or do you just keep some notes on your phone to say, oh, these are things that we need to discuss in that meeting?
Yeah, there's a structure. You start with a check-in, and we have an agenda, and I'm happy to share that with you guys. But you start with a check-in on your values and your vision, because we want to make sure that the entire meeting is grounded in those two most important things. And then we check in on our goals. We check in on we call it a quick calibration, which is really how aligned are we on the most important things in our family, and then checking in on the calendar, and then having what we call treasure chest, that conversation about like decisions. Where are we going to go on vacation? What gifts do we want to buy for this upcoming, holiday? What, how are we going to deal with this issue with, this family member? And so just that we call that treasure chest, because we actually believe that those conversations are opportunities to pull gold out for your relationship. When it is done well, it doesn't matter the topic, the conversation, when it is done well in a very healthy way, it's actually gold for your relationship versus sweeping it under the rug, not creating space for it, and then it escalates and it erupts like a volcano. And that is disastrous. There's a lot that could be disastrous, but is not disastrous when it's done correctly. And that's why we call it treasure chest. And so doing your treasure chest, and then always ending with just a small statement of gratitude for your spouse. It could be about doing the meeting. It could be something that happened over the course of the week, but just closing out with a little bit of tenderness.
Is money and finance still one of the biggest challenges that you find with couples, or is it something that you've seen couples get through, those financial hurdles?
What we have seen is that when the couples are aligned on family values and family vision, the arguments about money are a result of not being aligned on the values and the vision, right?
Mm.
If I get frustrated with the way that Sunny is spending money, that would happen in the past because I couldn't see how he spent this money on this thing contributed to anything because there wasn't clarity. But now when he spends money on, for example, he just did this, he just spent a lot of money on new tires for his race car, like a lot of money. And I understand that and it doesn't bother me, and I actually am excited for him. Like that's a weird thing for me to say. Like me 5-10 years ago would never be able to say that I was excited for him, but I'm excited for him because I understand how that hobby of his contributes to, we call it your individual roadmap and then family roadmaps, right? And how it contributes to his individual roadmap, his vision for his life, how racing is a very important piece of what lights him up, his energy, what brings him joy. And so I understand that about him. And so there's a lot less conflict around money and finances because it's not like he's just out there randomly spending money on random things. Everything that he's spending money on, I can tie back to pretty easily something on our family roadmap or something on his individual roadmap. So we've had those conversations, we understand. And so there's a lot of grace and compassion and empathy that happens as a result of that understanding, right? Like for me, he could easily get really frustrated with the money that I spend on gifts, but connection is one of my values and making people feel loved and really celebrated, right? And so he understands that my gift giving is in service of my connection value.
And you can, of course, over time reshape. 10 years ago, if I was to say to my spouse, I'm going to go and visit my friends in Australia for a holiday, the reaction might have been, no, why? This is not benefiting us. Whereas it can evolve to a point where you say, actually, I think it would be really great for you to do this.
Yeah.
Book it because you'll come back happier. So couples can change in that way as well. I'm sure you've seen many examples of that.
Yeah. And I mean, even in our own relationship, my husband, Sonny, loves to mountain bike. And when we first started dating, every Monday afternoon from 3 to 6 p.m., he would go mountain biking. And in the beginning, it felt very, I would say it felt like he was being selfish. It felt like he was taking time away from our relationship. And it felt like what he was doing was not aligned with what was important to us. And so I would always give him attitude like, oh, you're going to go again? Like another 3 hours, you're going to be unavailable. I guess I'll just figure out dinner by myself. Right. And I gave him all this grief about going to spend time on his hobby. And what has happened over the years is that mountain biking, not just mountain biking, but his love of doing really hard things, being outdoors, like pushing his limits. I understand because of the work that he's done how important that is to him and how it
Mm.
impacts how he shows up and how fulfilled it makes him feel. And so I understand the bigger picture. And so now I celebrate it. I encourage it. I there's zero grief when he goes to do it now. And even when it's inconvenient for me.
Makes sense. Why do couples come and see you? And is it awkward at first? Is there often one person who's saying, I think this would really help us? Or is it often, I mean, what are some example situations that you've seen?
Yeah, often there is one person being voluntold to come, and so there's a
Voluntold, I
resistor.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's usually a resistor, but what we have learned over the years is the resistor is usually the one that feels like they don't have time or space to do this work. And we used to say, okay, well, no big deal. Come whenever you're ready. And now we just tell the other person, do whatever you need to do, like drag them in because we know by lunchtime at the, middle of after a couple of hours of working with us in our first workshop, they are going to have so many insights, takeaways, light bulb moments that they are often that resistor person that's been voluntold is often our biggest fan. They are like raving fans by lunchtime after a couple hours. And so we just say, do whatever you need to do to get them in. Like just tell them you're taking them on a date. It doesn't even matter. Just get them in the door and we'll help them because what's happened is for a lot of times that resistor person, whoever it is, whether it's the male or the female, but whoever it is, often is feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they don't have time to go and do this work. Like I've got all these other responsibilities. They're the ones that I would argue need the work the most. And so that's why the work ends up being the most impactful because giving them clarity about their values, giving them clarity on how they can start to reduce that overwhelm. Oh man, then they start to feel some relief. Now they understand the importance of this work. And so and yeah, so I would say we see the full range, but often there is one person that's a little more hesitant. And I would say the reason that people are coming in is because the most common thing that we see is people who have hustled really hard and pursued society's definition of success, meaning work hard, climb that ladder, build that business, make money, and you'll be happy, right? And they did all those first few things and they look around and they're like, okay, waiting for that happiness. Like when is that going to happen? When am I going to start feeling that fulfillment? And so they're like, okay, now we need to recalibrate because what we were promised is not happening. I've got all this success and all this money, but something still feels a little like it's missing. And so that's when a lot of couples will turn to us is they know that, things are good in their relationship. It's not like we're not working with couples in crisis, right? We're working with couples that have a good solid foundation, but they just know that with a little bit of recalibration, a little bit of intentionality, a little bit of values and goal setting, man, things could really be supercharged for their relationship. That's where we come in.
And a relationship can be treated like a business. I mean, a business is quite clear about the expectations and, of course, the values. Although many businesses don't live their values, that's a whole other
Yeah, don't,
conversation.
don't put me on that tangent.
Yeah, but and having the roadmap. So really treating it with the same care as you would invest in a consultant to help you
Right.
organize your business and how you're going to operate that business with the tools and the rhythms, as you said. But we
Yeah.
often neglect the thing that's more important than your business. This is the
Yeah.
absolute foundation of your entire life.
Yep. Yep. And what we have seen, and it is surprising how often it happens. So if you're listening and you find yourself in this situation, I would say don't judge yourself because it's so common. But as a business leader, no business leader is going to try to lead their business without, having weekly meetings with their team and setting goals and getting clear about priorities and making sure that the team is aligned and moving in the same direction. So they do all these things for their business. And then with their home life, with their family, with their family team, which I would argue is the most important team that you will ever lead, your family, they're winging it. They're like, oh, it'll be fine. Like, I'll just show up, right? There's the amount of intentionality that we will put into our business is exponential compared to what most people put into their family. And I think it's because they believe well, because we've been told this myth, we've been fed this lie, right? Work hard, make money, and you'll be happy. Everything will fall into place. But it's not automatic. Business success doesn't automatically translate to personal success. Just because you work hard, make money, and climb that ladder does not mean that you're going to be happy on the personal side. But we often believe that that's the result. That's what will happen. And so we've got to be intentional about the family side if we want to see the same type of success that we see on the business side.
And not many people lie on their deathbed thinking, I wish I'd worked harder.
Yeah.
Whereas I wish I'd spent time with my family and my loved ones and been more present. That is one of the top regrets of people in the last phases of their life. So I sometimes just think of it this way. I think, I mean, this for probably for most people, I'm not sure what you think, but it's maybe a bit too extreme. But I think I'm going to have to say goodbye to my daughter one day. And
Mhm.
that's the most horrible thought. So it just makes me double down on presence today because you go, this is such a gift. And when you can shift your perspective to that, you really are in a place where you just want to invest, spend time, really make the experience as good as it can be. That's happiness. It's right here, right
Yeah.
now. It's not something in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm. So, um, we talked about running your family as a business. Are there ever differences that are completely irreconcilable? Like you've had a couple and you go, actually, maybe there is just so much difference that you would be better to go alone.
Well, we aren't dealing with couples in crisis. So
Yeah.
we have therapists that we refer out to. We are not therapy. Um, so I definitely think there's couples that are in crisis, right? So I don't want to say that, but for the couples that come through our program, even the ones that feel like, man, there's this big thing that we can't resolve. If they're not in crisis, but it just feels like there's this thing that they can't resolve, oftentimes our tools, our work, creating that space for them to have these conversations, they're able to find a way forward. And it's not surprising for that to happen because oftentimes it's just that the couple didn't have the time and the space to have these conversations and the right frameworks to have the conversations so that the conversations were actually healthy and productive and not escalating some sort of conflict, right? How do you make sure your spouse is leaving that conversation feeling seen, heard, understood, and safe?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely couples that are in crisis. I don't want to discount that. Like the work that counselors and therapists do is very important. We refer out to a lot of them. People would be surprised what you could actually work through um, with the right framework, with the right foundation of values and vision.
So, do you work in the business with your husband?
Yes. So we each have our own businesses, but then we work in Empowered Journey together, and it's been really fun because when we first started dating, he was working in a family business, and I came alongside him and was working in that family business with him. And so I kind of joined him in the process. And now we are doing this thing where we're building Empowered Journey together. And it's just been really fun to get to work with him again because we make a pretty good team. We're not perfect. We still argue about a lot of things. And our leadership team gets to sit there sometimes and just watch us argue. It's really fun for them. But it's been really fun getting to work with him again.
And for couples who actually do work together, they've established a business. Do you have any guidelines around talking about business at dinner or talking about business in the late part of the evening?
I think you need to just align on what works best for you. Because I know some
Mm,
couples that have hard rules, no talking about work when we get home. And they are very adamant about keeping that boundary.
mhm,
If that is what both of you agree on, then that's great. For me and Sunny, we love talking shop. Like we love like especially the tools and the product that we're developing for our clients. Like we love late into the night. Okay, well, if what about this? And then how does that impact, when somebody does this? And like we will go back and forth and essentially like R&D tools, ideas, concepts. And so, but we agree on that. We have, talked about how we want to like where we want to draw the line on when we are talking about work. We follow a framework from Strategic Coach, and in Strategic Coach, they teach us about free days, which is 24 hours of not working. And so we follow a free day structure where we take dedicated free days, 24 hours of not working, not talking about work. But when we're not on a free day, it's okay. Like we talk at night about work, but when we're on a free day, we try as much as possible to honor that free day cadence because we know to give our brains a break, to really be present with our family and be present with each other. It's important to honor that free day. And so this year, we're actually taking 220 free days, and it's actually part of our bigger family decade dream, which is to take 2,000 free days over the course of a decade. And so last year we did 198 free days. This year we're doing 220. In 2029, our goal is essentially due at the end of 2029. In 2029, we'll take 300 free days together as a family, and so we try to honor the free days. But if it's not a free day, we're talking about work from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed, and that works for us. That has been what we have kind of established as our norm.
mm. What's an example of a family roadmap or the 10-year plan? Maybe just it can be fictitious or something that you've created for a couple, but for someone who's sitting out there wondering, what does it actually look like to have that vision?
Yeah. So it's thinking about what success looks like for your family 10 years out. And for our family, what was important was time freedom because my husband grew up in a family business that was in the retail space. They worked 363 days a year. They had Thanksgiving and Christmas off. And so for him, time freedom was something that was really important for me too. And so we knew that we wanted something for our family decade dream that would really imply time freedom. And that's why we landed on that free days goal, right? Knowing that if we actually take 2,000 free days over the course of a decade, it implies a lot of other things. We call it your decade dream your linchpin goal, right? It implies that we have a rock star team in all of our businesses and that our businesses are self-managing. And it implies that our marriage is still really healthy and strong. It implies that we want to spend that kind of time with each other, right? If we're taking 2,000 free days, like if I don't like hanging out with my spouse, there's no way we're going to be able to take that many free days. It implies that our kids like to hang out with us. It implies that we've got things figured out and delegated at the house that we can be away for that amount of time. And so it implies a lot of things. It implies a lot of financial freedom, right? We can't take that amount of time if we still need to be in the business hustling hard. And so it implies all these things. And so that's what we ask our clients to think about is what are some of the things that you want to be true in 10 years for your family? When we think about ideal family life, what's true? And then what's the one goal that then implies that all of that is true? And so some examples of family decade dreams are 500 new experiences together. We've seen like 2,000 service hours at our local food pantry. We've seen, everything from adventure, play, there's time freedom. There is just thinking about like, what does ideal life look like for you? And then how do you measure that? And so the formula that we actually encourage our clients to use so that we know that it's written SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, is pretty simple. The formula is a number plus an activity or an endeavor. So 2,000 free days taken, 2,000 hours served at your local, food pantry, 500 new experiences together as a family. We even had one
Mm.
couple do 100 date nights abroad, which meant it implied that they still loved each other, that they wanted to go on date nights, that they could spend that amount of time abroad. And so, really thinking about like what's true in 10 years, ideal life, right? Dreaming, and then how do you capture all of that truth into one goal?
I love it. And do you communicate and share this with the kids? Is there a certain age when they can also become part of this and they should be aware of it? Or do you just model the behaviors and values and they kind of come along for the ride?
Yeah, great question. So, family values has been really fun because our family values are a byproduct of our individual values, right? Like, you can't do the family values work well if you haven't clarified your individual values. And so, because of that, our family values are very much aligned and hard with our hardwiring, me and Sunny's hardwiring. So there are things that we are already naturally talking about. We're not we're not trying to impose something on the family that we are also working towards, right? They're not aspirational. And so so our kids have heard us talk about these family values since they were born, right? We were on a trip a couple years ago, and at the time our kids were probably, I don't know, 5 and 3. Like the oldest two kids were probably 5 and 3. So like really little. And we rented this minivan that barely fit into the parking spot that we had at the Airbnb that we were staying at. And every day Sunny had to back into this parking spot. And the first day it was like an 8 point turn. He's gonna be so embarrassed that I'm saying this, but it was like an 8 point turn because that spot was so hard, right? And then the next day it was like 5, and then like the next day it was 3, like a 3 point turn. And what was really cool, one of our family values is better every day. This idea of like continuous improvement, being open and receptive and looking for feedback, always looking for ways to get better, learning, right? Improving, doing your own personal work. And so we talk about better every day all the time. It's one of my personal values, it's one of Sunny's values, it's our company value, it's a family value. It is something that we are obsessed with. We talk about it, we live it, we breathe it. And so on like the second or third day, the kids, unprompted by me, the kids were watching, we're all sitting in the car watching him do this, multiple point turn to get into this parking spot. And the kids go, "Yay, Baba, better every day." Like they could see that it was taking less times because he was doing it more and more and more. And the fact that they called it out and we're noticing like, "Oh, look, you got better because you practiced, right? Like this is day 2, this is day 3, this is day 4, you're getting better and better." And they called it out. And so I think that's the beauty of family values. Like when they're done right and you've really identified the ones that are true to your family, it's part of your family's hardwiring. You talk about it, you live it, you breathe it, and it just becomes part of who your family is. And so much so that even the little kids know it, they understand what's important, they celebrate it. And so the values that have been shared since they were born. Family decade dream, our 2,000 free days goal. They know about the goal. I don't know if they quite understand what it means or why, but they understand the idea of free days. They understand when we're on free days that we're pretty disconnected and that we're present with them. They understand that free days often, not always, because there's a lot of free days that we take, at home, but often free days implies like we're on a trip. And so they understand the idea of free days. Now, what's really cool is we each have our own individual decade dreams, because remember I said decade dream work is most effective when each individual does their own decade dream and then you come together and do a family decade dream. And so I was actually on a work call the other day and my 5-year-old daughter heard me talking about decade dreams, and she was like, "Did I hear you?" After I hung up, she heard me, she asked me, "Did I hear you talk about decade dream? Like, what is that?" And so I explained it to her, and then she's 5. This is all unprompted by me. But she said, "Well, I want to set one." And I said, "Okay. What do you think your decade dream should be?" And she thought about it, and then she said, "I want to visit 30 cities." And I was like, "That's amazing. I think you're probably going to hit like 20, or like you've probably already done 20 this year, right? Just by sheer of like some family trips and some trips that we did that we visited multiple cities." And she's like, "Oh, well," I was like, "Okay, well, you've probably already done 20 this year. What do you think, for 10 years?" And she's like, "Well, 30 times 10, I think I'm going to do 300." So she literally, we literally, she's just sitting right in front of me. She's 5 years old, and she set her decade dream to be 300 cities visited. And I was like, my heart was like swelling with pride. I was like, I can't believe my little 5-year-old daughter just set her decade dream. But she did that math on her own, and she figured it out. And so she set her individual decade dream. So, before that happened, I probably would have said like 10 is probably the youngest that people could do it. But I mean, she did it with very minimal coaching from me, and that was unprompted. So I think, yeah, even little kids can do this work. We've worked with teenagers. A lot of our clients will bring in their teenage kids to do the work with them.
Never a bad time to get clarity and to, have a plan. I just think even just talking to you about it, it just seems like it gives you something, a foundation
Yeah,
that and I love the fact that you have the plan individually, because
yeah,
then you can really respect each other's growth, because
yeah,
people grow at different trajectories. We play different roles over the course of a life and a career, and say, well, if that's what's really important for you, yes, we agree. And there's still this plan together. I love that.
yeah.
Mm. How can people connect with you? Do you do virtual consultations, or is it best in person? Where would you like people to go?
Yeah, well, I'm on all the major, social channels. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. They can also check us out on our website, empoweredjourney.com, Mpowered journey.com. And I would say, just if you are curious, you're interested, reach out to me. I love talking about this work and sharing it with people. This is really our purpose work. So we love just helping couples get that clarity so they can really be intentional about how they lead their family. And yes, we have virtual workshops that are virtual live stream. We have virtual on demand as well. So if people want to do it at their own pace. And so there's a lot of options. We're based out of Dallas. We host workshops in person in Dallas as well. But we have lots of virtual clients as well. So there's something for everybody.
Perfect. A final thought for those who stuck with us all the way to the end.
I would just say, be as intentional about your family as you are about your work and your career, because your family team's the most important team you'll ever lead, and business success does not automatically lead to success on the family side. You gotta be as intentional.
Love it. And thanks so much for joining. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
See you, everyone.